So it will be a short, efficient webinar with Gilles Vanermen, Head of Nature-Based Solutions at Hommes, Terre, and myself, Sarah Parent, Chief Ecological Officer at Go Forests. So a warm welcome to our webinar. It's Friday, and it's a webinar on carbon credits. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy your healthy lunch. I hope we can inspire you, and you can leave questions in the Q&A section, and we will contact you afterwards. We really want to respect our time, and we will come back to you afterwards, because it's a quite complicated topic. We will gather all the questions and answer them after the webinar. So I think I will start with this. Go Forest was founded in 2020, and we're active in tree planting in more than 17 countries. We choose to plant locally and globally. We plant trees in Belgium, most of Europe, and countries in the south, highly affected by climate change and with a high rate of deforestation. We support the south through mangroves, agroforestry, and reforestation, and we do this in collaboration with companies and local partners. This is done as part of HR campaigns, marketing campaigns, and most of all, part of the CSR strategy. Our mission is very clear. We want to represent the underrepresented. I think it's a strong mission. Locally, we seek out forests that need a helping hand to become more climate resilient through assisted natural regeneration, rather than focusing on the attractive hectare next to someone's headquarters, where there is no surrounding ecosystem. We aim to make investments in fire prevention and in hedgerow projects as well, alongside reforestation, and we try to make this appealing to investors. In the south, we want to support small projects and to achieve scale and to assist communities that urgently need help and support, and where trees are so much more than just trees, where trees are really systems. Summarized, we are mainly active in areas where a lot of deforestation has occurred, and in areas where famine is, unfortunately linked to global warming. As a startup 4 years ago, we really wanted to help smaller projects to grow by planting trees in an unverified, uncertified way. It's still today the biggest part of our tree business, because it's easy for companies to invest in a certain amount of trees with a price per tree, a price per hectare, and with monitoring and maintenance guarantees. We always wanted to be a flexible organization, accessible for anyone who wants to invest in tree planting. And we are not only focused on the big deals, we want everyone to be able to plant some trees. By not only, so the uncertified way is a way where you don't have to pay for audits, and it's a cost-effective way to plant trees and to provide our clients still a very transparent experience via a personalized impact dashboard, where they can follow up on the impact data, the satellite imagery, and project imagery. A very important thing, we believe in small steps on a big scale. Nice, Sarah, but the climate change it's happening very fast, and the urgency of the crisis, the increasing deforestation and the growing poverty and the lack of prospects in those regions makes it a fact that we absolutely need to focus on achieving an even greater scale on a shorter period of time. And this is something we can do with carbon credits on our ARR projects. ARR stands for afforestation, reforestation, and revegetation. Gilles will explain you more about the impact of carbon credits on the field, because it's very important to really actually realize what's happening on the field thanks to investments from companies. But carbon credits really serve as economic incentives for the local communities. Carbon credits make sure that there are more jobs created, they attract more international investments, they promote sustainable land use management, and they empower local governance, next to the fact that we, actually want to accelerate the global climate goals, which is much needed today. Most of us know the Sustainable Development Goals, and while carbon credits are a solution to offset the remaining CO2, the story beyond CO2, so the capturing of CO2 out of the atmosphere, it is also very important to focus on the co-benefits associated with the reforestation projects and that can be linked to the SDGs. Sadly, the climate crisis is also a crisis for humanity. And luckily, and we see a lot of CSRD content on LinkedIn. Luckily, we have the CSRD, so the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, because it's a positive step towards stimulating climate action for companies because it mandates transparent and consistent sustainability reporting, ensuring that companies are held accountable for their environmental impacts. Companies like yours maybe are measuring the ecological footprint of the company. You're setting a roadmap with reduction targets, but even with the best efforts to reduce your emissions, you will always have some level of residual emissions. And by choosing to invest in carbon credits from, for example, reforestation projects, you can effectively compensate for your unavoidable emissions and you can give back to nature. Maybe back to the basics. What is a carbon credit? I think most of you know, but I just wanted to explain. 1 carbon credit is 1 ton of CO2 reduced, avoided, or removed. And tree planting is an example of a carbon removal strategy. So with the previous info in mind, I want to explain you a little bit more about our future credits program. This is a lot of content, but you can print screen if you like. The usual process of companies is to purchase carbon credits, and this is a fairly transactional model, heavily influenced by the market price of a carbon credit at that time. What we do is we go a step back in the time and we actually plant hectares of new forests with companies, and that forest or those hectares will generate carbon credits as from 3 years after planting for at least the next 20 years. So you benefit from the credits your hectares provide after each certification round. And by doing that, you're super involved. So your communication department will like that. And your project keeps on giving. And not only in terms of credits, but also in terms of benefits for the local people. And you will receive profound reporting, and you will be able to follow up on your trees via satellite imagery and other updates on your impact dashboards. So, as I said before, the South needs our help, and our first projects are in places where the climate urgency is high, such as Madagascar and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And to summarize it for you, what is now the difference between certified or non-certified? Well, the trees are planted in the best possible way in both systems, and we really want the trees to survive for the longest period possible. We really aim to have forests that are healthy within 20, 30 years, climate resilient. But the difference lies in the fact that you will have exact data, not averages, but exact data on your trees. Also, thanks to external validation, according to international standards, such as the gold standards, and we work with the gold standards. And the fact that certified impact allows you to make claims according to the CSRD. So the choice between certified or non-certified really depends on what you want to claim and what you want to achieve. And we, as Go Forest, we believe in the complementarity of both, because we believe in as much positive impact possible. And in both cases, we will deliver you traceable impacts, but there are just different implications for claims and legislation. And before I give the mic to Gilles, I want to end with the main principles, whether you plant trees uncertified or whether you're investing in hectares that will provide carbon credits. I want to share 3 main principles. And the first one is be transparent. It's a journey for everyone and no one is perfect. So be honest and transparent with where you are and what you do and what you're going to do in the coming years. And show what you do with enough tangible data proof. And an example is, for example, satellite imagery, where we draw polygons around your hectares of forests. And don't be too humble, because you really have to dare to communicate to others, because then you really can create a ripple effect by inspiring others. And yeah, think of the mosquito in the room. I don't hope you have mosquitoes in the room, but you're never too small to make a difference. And you can already make a difference today, even by planting 1 tree, because every tree matters. And I give the floor to Gilles with this quote: we can be the change that our grand or children want to see. And yeah, I already thank you for your attention. And Gilles will explain you more about the impact on the fields. And I think it's the best part of this webinar. So Gilles, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I hope everyone can hear me well. Maybe just a quick word about me. So I'm Gilles. I've been involved with Hommes, Terre for about 4 years now. And I spent about 2 years in Burkina Faso and a bit less than a year in Senegal, really working with the projects on the ground. So I will give maybe a bit of a background view of, it's one thing to buy a carbon credit, but what happens then? What happens with the money and what happens on the ground? And we have experienced both working with non-certified partners as well as with certified partners. So I can give a bit of a background view on how that works and what happens, the whole background story behind the carbon credit. So next slide. Maybe an introduction. So Hommes, Terre is French. It means people and earth. And there's a reason why it's French, because we work in West Africa, in Senegal, Burkina Faso, and Mali. And there's also a reason why we always say Hommes et Terre. So it means people first, and then land second. And so we work very closely with local communities in Senegal, Burkina, and Mali to restore degraded or desertified lands. And we believe that the key factor of a reforestation project is with people, and that you should try to change people's habits, and that they are often the cause, but also the solution of land degradation. So you can go to the next slide. Of course, there's also the aspect of land. So what we do very concretely is we try to restore degraded, desertified lands in the Sahel region. And we try to recreate forests that will sequester carbon, but also provide, very large benefits to local communities. And we use let's call it the famous half moon technique of basically digging in the soil to catch rainwater and then try to recreate an ecosystem from there. So next slide. I want to just state that, as you can see on the picture, it's possible to reverse desertification. And I always say it's simple, but it's definitely not easy. And I know that from experiences on the ground. And Alan Savory, who you see on the picture, is a bit of a guru in this world. And he said that desertification will be a bigger problem than climate change this century. So even if all of the companies transition to net zero and make sure that there are no residual emissions and everything else, we will still have a huge problem of desertification that will only be made worse by climate change. And so I think we need to solve that problem. We are trying to do that, and we believe that carbon financing is a great way to provide financing for these projects. And I will explain why. So why carbon credits? Let's say that the class of projects that I've been working in, that Hommes Terre works in, is called nature-based solutions. So it's basically using nature to draw down carbon from the atmosphere into forests, into soils, into mangroves. And what I've learned is that a nature-based solution project, you can compare it a bit to an infrastructure project. So it's like building a bridge, it's like building an airport, or even a nuclear energy facility. And what that means is that you need a long-term mindset, So you can't restore a forest in a couple of years. You need a mindset of 10 to 20 to 30 years. You need to do it at scale. It doesn't make any sense to restore 2 hectares, 5 hectares, 10 hectares. You need to do it at a large scale, or it will be economically not viable, and there will be no capacity to do that. And thirdly, which I think is very important, you need a certain amount of professionalism and transparency. And I think in let's say the world of development of NGOs, that is quite often what is lacking, is these three factors. And so I believe that carbon financing and the certification that goes with it, despite some of the criticisms that it's had, I believe that it's today one of the only, and maybe the only, viable way to really finance those nature-based solutions in the long term and at scale. And so that's why I think it's important that companies should not only reduce emissions, but that there should be a portion where they invest into these high impact, high quality nature-based solutions. So you can go to the next slide. And so why certified? I mean, we have experience with working in both ways. I believe certified is better. Why? Because first of all, it is quantified, because a lot of projects say that they have planted so many trees, say that they have sequestered so many carbon, but is it really happening? You need to quantify and measure it. Secondly, these standards require a degree of permanence. So you need to make sure, and you need to have the systems in place that the trees and the carbon will stay there for 40 years, 60 years. Some even require 100 years now, which is a bit crazy. It needs to be additional. What that means is that the money you invest, the carbon that is sequestered will only be there through your financing. So it's not just an additional financing on top of 10 other ones. And very importantly, it has to be with community benefits. So not only the project should profit from it, but also the people that live on these lands and that work in those projects. And I think it's very easy to say all that, and a lot of projects do. The difference with certified is that this is verified by a third-party auditor. So that actually a third party who is neutral, who has absolutely no interest in certifying your project, will come and verify if all those criteria are met. And I think that's really the key difference. Now, just a quick view. I would like to spend hours of our time discussing everything we do on the ground. It won't be possible, I'm afraid. But the thing, what happens on the ground is there are a couple of things that people see, on social media, in the impact dashboards and everything, and that's what people like to see: soil restoration, collecting seeds, nurseries, planting trees, monitoring those trees, carbon sequestration. I like to say that about 50% of our budget is actually going there, into that work. And then there's a huge aspect that people don't see, and that's why it's called Hommes et Terre. These desertified, degraded lands. There in the Sahel, there's about 1 billion people living there, which is quite hard to fathom if you look at the land that they're living in. And so 50% of our budget goes to engaging those communities, building local capacity, making sure we actually have the agreements and the land rights to work on those lands, because you can't just go anywhere and plant trees on land that is not yours. We need to manage it as a common good, which I think in Europe we don't really have that anymore. We only have private lands. There are a lot of lands are common good, which need a special management system. We need to set up new value chains to make sure that the trees actually become valuable, that the fruits and nuts can be harvested. So there's a whole sort of aspect that goes around a reforestation project that you often do not see on social media or anything else. So I think it's important to recognize that. What are the impacts? Again, there's something that people see, which is trees and carbon, and which I think is the measurable and the hard part of buying a carbon credit. But the great thing about a carbon credit, in my opinion, is that with the carbon credit, you buy all of these other benefits that the project will have to the communities. For example, there's female empowerment. So especially in the global south, making sure that women have a role in these projects and that they become owners of these new forests is very empowering. There's access to water, soil fertility, an increase in household revenues, in jobs, and there's biodiversity. So basically making sure that the ecosystem is revived and that there's a whole sort of animal life that's coming back. Basically, if you're buying a carbon credit, you're also buying all of these other impacts, and I think that's something important to take into mind. So yeah, you can go to the next slide, Sarah. So I think I hope to have given a bit of a really short background on what Hommes does, and I think how carbon credits can finance that. And I think what Sarah is doing with Go Forest is making sure that you invest in a forest, because that's really what's needed, is investing before you can get the carbon sequestration. I think that's a great way to finance nature restoration and to have an impact on the world. And if you're at the same time, if you're reducing your emissions, I think that's the best thing you can do as a company. So thank you for your attention, and happy to look into all the questions.
So yeah, thank you for your attention. Thank you for giving up your lunch. It's not really giving up. I hope we've inspired you. I'm super inspired by what Gilles and Hommes are doing. We should all work together. SDG 17 partnerships for the goals. I think it's a very important one to bundle our forces. And the next chat or the next webinar is Go Ocean. It starts at 12:30. We will drop the link to the webinar in the chat. It's also 30 minutes about marine ecosystem restoration focused on the North Sea. In case you have questions about this webinar, you can send us an email or you can leave your questions and we will come back to your questions. So thank you and have an amazing weekend.